Alright, so where we left off last time, we had our skill unlock screen set up so we could navigate through here, unlock skills being purchased with experience points, and navigate with the controller with the mouse. We can pan up and down. And in general, this was kind of a finished concept. But I also have a need for showing additional skill information. And that's what we're going to take care of in this session. So we'll pop in here in our designer, and we need a new window. So we're going to create ourselves a new UI panel, and we're just going to call this the skill description panel. And we'll need a new script to control this UI we're going to build. Now for the UI itself, this is going to be a pop-up window on top of the main skill screen. So we're going to want this guy to be a child of our unlocking skill screen. We're going to control the visibility of this screen from our unlock skill screen controller. So we'll pop back over here to Visual Studio. And we're going to need to have access to that game object. Actually, we're going to have a reference to the skill description controller itself. Now I'll need to do the normal check to make sure that this is bound up in the editor. And we'll return to Unity and just set up our components first off. So our new control gets a skill description controller script. Our controller over here needs the reference to that object. And we need to make this a little smaller. So we'll bring this in to about that size. And actually, because of the way the scroll rect works, this needs to be sibling to the rest of our content and not a child of it. Because if you'll remember from the previous part, when we scroll, this entire content gets moved around while this white highlighted viewing area remains the single section where the camera is pointing. So we want this pop-up window to always appear within the center of this section. So we're going to anchor that to the center. We're going to make our position X0, our position Y0. Width is 560, we'll even that out. And for our height, 340. And we'll see how this looks once we put all the information we need in. And speaking of information that we need, what exactly do we have? So we have our skill, and then if you remember, we have our derived classes, passive skill and active skill, with a very small amount of differentiating information. And for display, we really only need to show the display name and the description and the cost, because the parent objects are already displayed just naturally via the tree structure, and the key is for internal use only. From passive skill, we don't need to show anything because these will, well, maybe we do need to show these. It depends on how we build out the description of the skill, if we show actual information or if it's more of a verbal description of what the skill does. And for the active skill, we do need to show the SP cost and skill usage requirement. We should at least show the whether it's a battle skill, an overworld skill, or both. So let's go back to our new class, skill description controller, and let's just go ahead and write this in. So we have display name, description, SP cost, XP cost. Well, yeah, that seems about right. So in that case, we're going to have text fields for all of these items. Okay, so, and in addition, as with all of our other setups here, we need to report to the editor if these are not wired up correctly. With that done, we are not going to have any update. Now we need a way to tell the controller which skill information to display. So this dot, we're going to keep a reference to this, and we're going to go ahead and update all of our text based on the selected skill. So that's right, usage was also a aspect of an active skill. So if this dot selected skill is an active skill, which the is keyword will do a type comparison between this this implemented type versus the type provided here. We're going to go ahead and hide and show these sections based on whether or not the skill is an active skill or not. Now, when I go ahead and put the UI together, I'm going to have more than just the text information. I'm going to have labels to go along with the value text. So I'm going to need to go ahead and add some more stuff here and hide and show it as the situation comes up. But as far as kind of a first pass here, we'll just stick with the actual value information labels. So in addition to this, I'm going to have a couple buttons on the screen. And these buttons need to fire events to tell the owner of this controller what to do. So we're going to have a public event action cancel clicked and public event action purchase clicked. And to go along with each of these, we'll have methods we're going to call from within this controller to invoke them on the button click. Now, you might have noticed in the past I copy the event into a private variable. And this is to prevent a different thread from hooking or unhooking additional subscribers while the event's actually executing. Because these events, I believe, these delegates are inherently a value type and are copied by value when you assign it to a new variable. So we'll take all the subscribers at the time this is invoked, but if more occur while the event is actually executing, it won't interrupt the execution order or create any other strange circumstances. Now, I need a few public methods for my buttons to actually invoke from the editor. And I'm keeping these separate in case I want to make some additional functionality calls when the button's actually clicked. Like I might want to play a sound effect or do something like that. I don't want that tied to invoking the event in case I decide I want to invoke the event from some other bit of code than the button. And along that same vein, I'm going to need a reference to these two buttons. Now then, I'm going to need to set and enable and disable some of these buttons based on the current stats of the player. So, when we do this update text, when we do the skill set here, I want to what? If this dot selected skill dot XP cost is greater than or equal to player.instance.current experience. Then we're just going to change the interactable property on the button, which will put it in the disabled state. So it's still visible, but the click won't register. And we'll be using the disabled color defined on the button style. So that seems pretty good from a first pass perspective. Let's go ahead and start putting the actual UI together. So come back over here. We're going to need a few text labels. Now, you noticed I created prefabs out of this new button control I added. And that's so that later on when I define a common UI style for all my buttons, I can just change the prefab and have that style be picked up by every spot that I'm using that same prefab instance. So let's go ahead and position some of our stuff here. So we've got our display name, we've got a description, experience cost. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and spread these out a little bit. I'll worry about actually ordering them later. Oops. Okay, so that looks all right. We've got our controls spaced out relatively evenly. Some sample text placed in here to make sure we're kind of good on spacing and size. So we're going to go ahead and hide this. Well, actually, yeah, we're going to have that invisible by default. And now, in our unlock skills screen controller, we're going to need to go ahead and take advantage of this description object. So previously, when the user was clicking one of our skill nodes, we have this available skill clicked event, which was performing the purchase of the skill. What we're going to want to do now is we're going to want to take that skill description controller. We're going to pass it the skill that we're looking at, and it's going to populate the information for us using that set skill method. And we are also going to be subscribed to the purchase and cancel clicked events, which on cancel, we're just going to hide the window. And on purchase, we're going to perform the exact same logic we were performing before, subtracting the experience points from the player and adding the new skill to the unlock skills object, as well as updating the styles of our nodes. So we're going to go ahead and, once we're past here, in our start method, we're going to go ahead and hide the window just in case we've left it on in the editor for some reason. And we're going to go ahead and hook up to the two events. And as you might have noted from previous parts, I like to keep my event subscriptions down in the bottom of my class. I just find it a little easier to manage that way. Yeah, so at this point we have our skill information. Now I'm going to show the object before I set the text. Actually, no. We're going to try this first. I know in past versions there were some issues with setting the values of UI elements when they're deactivated, but maybe they fixed that in some recent versions. So we'll try this first and we'll find out. Now we're going to take our purchase and we're going to move this down here. Now, our UI enables and disables the purchase button based on the cost of the skill, but I'm going to go ahead and just do a secondary check here, just in case, something happened. So if you'll remember, our description controller has the skill that was passed in. And I'm going to go ahead and expose this as a property so that I can just get this back from the skill window later on. So let's see what happens. Pop back over to Unity, run the application. So I'm going to click on Bash. Brought up my window here. Now I don't have a gamepad focus on the window. It's kind of a problem, but we can come back to that in another time. So you can see we got our skill name, this guy. I need to do some formatting on the text here so these numbers actually have the label in the text box. Normally Normally you would want to have a separate label and then the text value, but because the length of the strings for both labels are exactly the same, I can just use a string format, and as long as these two text boxes are aligned at the same spot, the only difference in spacing is going to be on the font kerning. So cancel should just close the window without actually purchasing the skill, which it didn't do crap, and purchase did not do nothing. Didn't do quite anything. So clearly there's some disconnect here in my event subscription. No, you know what? We forgot to do something. In our skill description window here, we have our buttons that have no events hooked up to their click. So this is where we need to grab our object here, look at our skill description controller, and wire it up to the cancel click and the purchase click. Is that what I called them? That was close. That would have been a, yeah, all right. So purchase click and keep our naming consistent. All right, so yeah. Let's give that another shot. Close the window. And our purchase also needs to close the window. So that was something I forgot as well. So in our unlock skill screen controller, once we're done with the purchase, we need to go ahead and hide our description again. And in addition, we had said that the string formatting on these were wrong, on the SP cost. And our XP cost also needs a string.format. format. All right, so let's purchase bash. Closes the window. And it looks like that is working perfectly. All right, well, thank you for watching. Have a nice day, and happy coding.